Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of the Unclassified podcast. I am America's Mayor, Ben Wheeler, and I'm joined today, as always, with teen heartthrob Preston Stewart. And today, before we get into Iran and the Chinese secret nuclear test and all these other things, we do have to talk about something. So if you guys recall, and I know a lot of you recall because you continually send me photos on Instagram of you at your local Annie Ann's. I had an Annie Ann's rant that went triple platinum, I would say. Yeah. And I say this because not only are all of you sending me photos of you at Annie Ann's or of an Annie Ann's you pass, but other creators are now sending me photos. Philip DeFranco sent me a photo of him at an Annie Ann's. So it has gone pretty big, so big that the individual who told me that they went to Annie Ann's every day has texted me wanting to correct the record, and I think it is only fair. So we may lay over my rant before this, and then I will read what the text here says. Well, I was talking to somebody, and they told me, and I think this is disgusting behavior. They say every day after school, because they're a teacher, they go to an Annie Ann's that has a drive-through, and they get a hot pretzel every day. That's crazy. If you're going to Annie Ann's drive-thru, you need a Prozac prescription. All right. So it says, was listening to your podcast. So proud of you, by the way. But there was a story that I found very interesting. I remember talking to you about the Annie Ann's drive-thru by my house. I want to clarify something. I do not go there every day. That is insane. I go when I pick up my mom from school, which is once every 6 months. Just wanted you to know I'm not inhaling a 3,000 calorie cinnamon sugar pretzel every day. Rest of the podcast was good, though.
Correction for the record.
So, anyways, I don't know if that's true or not. I heard what
Allegedly.
I heard, but for the sake of fairness, I figured it was only fair to alleviate that they are denying that they go every day. And that's fine. I go every time I'm in the airport, and it's cool, and we love it, right? So, anyways, what can you do? But Stewie, what's going on with you? What's crack-a-lackin', big dog?
There's been a couple wild things this week, and Ben is now off Twitter and talking about how useless Blue Sky is. I don't know why you're even doing that. So he's missing out on all sorts of stuff right now. Probably better for his mental health, but not great for the prep for this show, because I'm bringing up things, and he's going, whoa. That's crazy. I thought we were going to talk about this. You're learning about it for the first time. Get back in the groove, man.
When you said the Chinese nuclear test, I was mind blown. I was like, they did what? Yeah. Okay. So, Preston, take us away. Take us to our first topic of discussion.
All right. Yeah. We're going to start with China and then get into Iran. But I do want to mention what's media in the U.S. right now without bringing up Epstein. And it's starting to impact the national security space. For the life of me, can we just have people that are not involved with that? Is that too much to ask? Can we just have folks where you type their name into the search and they're not there? I feel like that should not be too high of a bar. But in the last 24 hours, we've learned that the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Steve Feinberg, is in the documents a lot. And the Secretary of the Navy is there as well, having traveled on Epstein's jet and all sorts of. I think one of them had a business arrangement with that. Come on. What are we doing? Now, the Navy Secretary, their spokesperson is, we know, a sworn enemy of the pod. That's the...
Yeah.
So I haven't seen her comment on it yet. She's in a tough spot now, having to defend Epstein.
Well, she can come on here and try to defend Epstein if she wants. But I saw what the Deputy Attorney General said, Todd Blanche. He said, it's not illegal to party with Jeffrey Epstein, which is...
Bro, it's everybody's in that thing. Everybody's
interesting statement.
It's shocking. So we are seeing a couple countries around the world, people are starting to be removed from positions and such just because of their association. They're like, look, even if what you were doing was legal, the association with this dude shows a lack of integrity, a lack of moral character, a lack of judgment. So people in other countries are getting removed from positions of authority, but not here in the U.S. We moved so far in the direction against cancel culture that you can do anything at this point. But anyways, we're not going to go down the Epstein rabbit hole.
Speaking of Epstein,
Yeah.
although maybe I'm about to get sued for defamation because I don't think she has anything to do with Epstein. The Tulsi Gabbard whistleblower complaint. That is, I don't know if any of y'all have seen this. It is so severe that it has to be locked in a safe. And they're trying to figure out a way to tell Congress. That's how sensitive it is. Now, who could know what it could be? I mean, it could really be anything, right? Maybe, probably not her being a Russian agent, right?
Is she on an e-gaming team with Assad?
You know, one
team?
would think.
Maybe.
Dude.
So that the update there today is that the whistleblowers, I can't keep track of that one because this whistleblower complaint came out, and then the DNI and Gabbard, their office, released a statement kind of contradicting the entire thing, but also talking about something different, if that makes sense. Like, they kind of answered a different question in a way and presented it as like a slam dunk, and it wasn't clear. Like, are you talking about something different, or is that related to this? Anyways, the people representing the whistleblowers just said, we're going to give you until Friday, and if you don't release it, like it has to go to Congress, and if you don't do that, then we're just going to do our own unclassified briefing to Congress. And like 6-7 hours ago, they said, well, you didn't do it, so we are going to Congress on Monday. So we'll see. I have no idea. Of course, anything like this is being painted as heavily partisan in either direction, but we'll see.
That's crazy. She needs to be removed. I mean, we said that when she was nominated, that she was not.
She's got a lot of election fraud work to do down in Atlanta right now, so she can't be removed quite yet.
Yeah, what the hell is she doing here? She's at the Fulton County Ballot Processing Center, taking out ballots from 2020. I mean, good Lord, they're still litigating an election from 6 years ago that they lost fair and square.
Let's we're at risk of going down the Epstein and conspiracy vortex here. China. This is one, it is beyond me how this is not getting more attention. But it also feels a little bit like the U.S. didn't really want it to have attention. This announcement that China tested, let me make sure I have the exact words here correct. China conducted nuclear explosive tests, and they used a method called decoupling to hide its activities from the world. They conducted a yield-producing test on June 22nd, 2020. That would mark the first nuclear test carried out by a country not named North Korea since 1998. It is in stark violation.
Is explosive test a nuclear test, though?
There's, I guess, all right, so there's a threshold that you cross, is my understanding. Like, there's different aspects of this that you can test, but the specific language being utilized by the United States Undersecretary of State. So this is like an official U.S. announcement said that it was a nuclear explosive test. They released this as the fourth point in a 6-tweet thread at 4:00 in the morning on Friday. I don't look, there's ways to hide things in the media, but like, what? I feel like this should have been front page news.
Well, do we think it's being hidden from the media, or do you think it's like kind of like how Putin always invades right as the Olympics are starting? You know, is it kind of like that? I mean, if you're China and this happened, you have the Winter Olympics Friday, and then you have the Super Bowl Sunday. It's a great time to kind of hide it away.
Here's the other side of this, and we always need to be skeptical of anything any government says. I think that's healthy. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty folks, the ones that monitor this around the world, right out the gate said, no, we did not see that occur. And now we've gone back and been able to comb through the data on that date and don't see anything to suggest this happened. China, for their part, as expected, said, what are you talking about? We didn't do that. We, of course, adhere to all of these restrictions. But like, I don't know, man, that's like such a serious allegation. And of course, this happens the day after the New START treaty expires, or this announcement is made. Like, did we sit on this for 6 years?
It is interesting. It is bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Did we sit on it for 6 years?
And then we did. So we sat on it for 6 years, didn't tell. I get that we don't like international organizations anymore, but like this transcended administrations. So this means that over the last 6 years, nobody was on board with apparently even letting the monitoring agency know that this happened. And I will, have the caveat that we certainly have intelligence gathering capabilities and sources that a UN agency doesn't have access to. But the idea that we sat on this and didn't share it with them at all for 6 years feels weird. I don't know what to make of this. Like the two arguments that are being presented right now is that Trump is going to use this as a justification for us to conduct our own nuclear tests. Remember, he talked about wanting to do that. And they asked him, like, you're talking about the delivery system. And in the interview with CBS, he said, no, the nuclear weapons, we're going to test those. China's already doing it. And they pushed back and they said, no, they're testing their delivery systems. And he said, no. They are testing their weapon systems, nuclear explosions. They are doing it, but they're able to do it because their media covers it up. That was back in like December, January of 25. And everyone was like, this is crazy. What's he even talking about? This kind of lines up with that. So that's one possibility. The other one that could, these aren't mutually exclusive, is the idea that the United States is trying to set up a next iteration of this New START treaty, and we're going to pull China into it as well. It's not just with US and Russia, and announcing that they're conducting nuclear tests might provide some sort of pressure to force them into it.
That is interesting. On the Trump nuclear test thing, I spoke with someone. I think I have to be careful what I say exactly, but I spoke with someone who does nuclear weapons for the U.S. military. And they were saying, I said, the Congressional Research Office says it'll take 24 to 36 months to set up an actual nuclear test. So I was like, so by the time we get around to it, it's going to be 2028. And he's going to be a lame duck at that point, right? So they're not going to happen. And they were like, well, that's a formal nuclear test. In theory, you can test
You can drive out into the desert if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, you do have me there. That is true. That is a formal nuclear test. So I don't necessarily know where the mind of the U.S. nuclear forces are. I assume they are mortified by that idea. They take their jobs very seriously. But that is, I think you're right about wanting to pull China into a New START treaty. I also think China's just not going to go for it, though, because China still severely lags behind the U.S. in nuclear missiles and nuclear warheads. When you get into this New START treaty where Russia's also involved in it, Russia and the U.S. had a similar amount. China's still way behind. So, I mean, if you're them, what are you going to agree to lock in at 400, 500 nuclear missiles? Well, the U.S. has how many? 3,000, I think.
Now Marco Rubio published a Substack post yesterday. Don't know if you know about this. I know you're off X, but you're off Substack. You can follow the State Department Substack.
I try not to listen to anything those assholes have to say. But
so
what did he say?
So you missed it. Good thing we're doing this. He made the argument that New START, the concept behind New START, doesn't apply today because it completely ignores China as a nuclear power. And it mentions, like, look, they are way behind in terms of quantity, the United States and Russia, but that doesn't mean we should just ignore them for any future nuclear treaties. And we need to find a way, a new model, a new concept. And I think what you said fits that. Like, we can't use the same numbers that we would use with Russia that we would use with China. It has to be a different format. But I think they have a good point of, if we're going to stand up some sort of new nuclear treaty, it's kind of ridiculous that we just ignore China entirely.
I fully agree with you. I fully agree with you. I think you're correct. I also think the hard part is China, because how do you get them into a treaty in which they're not necessarily equals? And there's talk, well, then maybe the U.S. will reduce how many nuclear weapons it has, because the conventional logic, at least 4 or 5 years ago, was that the United States does not really believe in the utility of nuclear weapons because it has such a big conventional military that, it's kind of redundant to a certain extent. So I shouldn't say they don't believe in it, but the idea of a nuclear tit for tat was just something that wasn't at the front of mind for nuclear planners. I don't know how that stands since the invasion of Ukraine, but perhaps the U.S. will reduce how many nuclear weapons it has in order to make China reduce, or like China lock in place or something.
To add some context for the numbers there, let's see, the data I have here shows 4,300 nuclear warheads with Russia, 3,700 in the United States, and 600 with China. I don't know how exact that is, but it's a magnitude difference, 6x more that the United States has. I don't know. Do you see? It's hard for me to envision a scenario right now where everybody is so happy with each other and getting along. We're like, you know what we should do? Voluntary nuclear drawdown. That seems a ways off.
I think you're right, but I also think it's like the missile gap in the Cold War that was like almost purely emotional. Because at like the peak, the U.S. had 41,000 nuclear missiles,
I don't know,
and the Soviet Union more. That's like kind of purely emotional. Like, why would you ever need that, right? So, I don't know. I do think though that China is not going to draw down voluntarily. You're going to need more sticks to do it, and also if the logic that we're being told from the U.S. government is that you can't trust China on anything, how are you going to trust that they'll follow this, right? So, there's kind of a dilemma there for U.S. planners to figure that out. But I don't know. I don't think we're getting a New START treaty. I think we're not getting one at all.
I feel crazy with this story for what it's worth, because regularly things happen or they pop up and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is bigger news. And then I realize that it's like a Shia militia did something crazy in eastern Syria. And it's like, oh yeah, very few people are interested or paying attention to any aspect of that. This is nuclear weapons and China. Like I cannot, like I feel a little bit crazy seeing this. Like if this was reporting coming out of just like a random publication and they said an unnamed US government official, I would say it's not true, because the response here has just been silent. But the accusations came from the US government. Like we just kind of, oh, by the way, guys, before you go watch the Super Bowl this weekend, just to keep you up to speed, 6 years ago, China conducted a nuclear test. But moving on, have a great weekend. It's like, I can't figure out why exactly we're approaching this the way that we are. It doesn't require like panic by any stretch of the imagination, but like, it's a pretty serious deal. We're just kind of moving right along.
For what it's worth, though, I believe at 4 a.m. that same time, while they were dropping this, but didn't the president tweet out a video of Obama and Barack and Michelle Obama as gorillas? So that was like all the news coverage I saw yesterday. It was like wall to wall.
So you're thinking that we might have just started a new nuclear arms race to cover up a racist tweet?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the reason we're not seeing it is because, I mean, that's certainly an aspect of it, right? Is, he puts this racist tweet out there, and then, I mean, the whole saga of it yesterday of they said, oh, let's stop the outrage, lighten up, have some humor, the White House says, and then the White House goes, actually, it was an intern who posted it, not the president, and then Trump gets up there 3 hours later and he goes, no, I saw it and I posted it, and no, I don't apologize. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Do you ever have a topic where it's trending so much that you can't get away from it, and you're like, I'm not trying to follow this anymore? Yeah, that was it for me yesterday. It was like, there's so many other things I'm trying to keep up with, but like everybody was chiming in some way, shape, or form. I couldn't get away from it, and I wasn't even like spending time digging in to find out like what somebody said or what the update is. I was scrolling straight past it, but it didn't matter.
The nuclear test or
no? Oh,
Trump's racist video?
No. Yeah, the monkey.
I kind of have that with, I don't know if you're on Instagram Reels, because I know you've had your Instagram account taken from you. But
that's not entirely accurate.
Go ahead, correct.
I still manage that account.
Okay, so on Instagram Reels though, I can't get away from this. Do you have the thing of like everyone's like, this year I'm becoming Chinese, or I'm becoming so Chinese? Do you have that at all?
No.
Like my entire reels is like people being like, I don't even call it Chinatown anymore. I call it town. That's a sign of how Chinese my mind is becoming. And you don't have this at all. You're
No,
looking at me like I'm crazy.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
I like it is my entire feed and I cannot get rid of it. But it's kind of, it's on the same tune of that.
Yeah, you can't
but
get out,
yeah,
can't get out of a little hole you're in. Let's shift over to Iran, but I want to address the Instagram allegations here because it's
go ahead.
unfounded. So I'm very fortunate that some of these accounts have grown, and I just straight can't keep up with the messages. And DMs on Instagram are awesome. Like there's so many like gems in there, but there's so much spam that it gets lost. Like I can't tell you how many like really good connections I've made from hidden comments, like or not hidden comments, hidden messages, hidden requests, where Instagram is like, this looks like spam. We're not going to show it to you. But like, no, it's a real person with like a big account, and it's like, yes, 100% we should connect with that person. I was not very good at going through DMs and checking on those regularly enough. So my wife, Megan, lovely wife Megan, is helping with that. So she goes through there to flag things for me to respond to, and in the process, kind of sifts through all the junk. And when I mean junk, I mean like genuine, like Chinese sex bot junk. And between a bunch of those will be like a dude saying, "I'm a Ukrainian soldier fighting in Kupiansk. Do you have time for a quick chat?" It's like, yeah, of course. So that's what Ben's thrown out there. Still my account.
Yeah. Well, that is, I mean, you should have her forward you the Instagram reels I send you, because I'm sending you some bangers, and
that's I have a filter set up.
No, you don't see him. But Iran. You
want to know how crazy of a week it's been? Since our last show, the United States shot down an Iranian drone that was over one of our aircraft carriers, and tried to board a U.S. flagged vessel in the Persian Gulf.
Really?
Since not in the news, right? There's too much happening, man.
I'm gonna have to get back on Twitter.
You're missing too much. That was in the span of about 2 to 3 hours. So the U.S. was tracking a Shahed 139, maybe 129, which is a reconnaissance type drone. Kind of looks like our Predator or Reaper. They can be armed. They can carry missiles. They also can just be used to conduct reconnaissance. The drone, according to the United States, was aggressively approaching the U.S. aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. I believe it's, I think it's the Lincoln that's there. Anyways, it was aggressively approaching one of our aircraft carriers in the region, and an F-35 shot it down. Iranian media was pretty funny because they mentioned about how they were flying in international airspace. It was no issue, and they lost communication with the drone. It's like, well, it got shot down. Like, that's how you lost communication with it. It doesn't exist anymore. They were like, an investigation is ongoing to see why communication was lost. It's like, well, it blew up. There's no more drone. Problem solved. The United States said they were operating in international waters. There's been no evidence to the contrary on that. And then shortly thereafter, a U.S. flagged tanker with a U.S. crew had IRGC boats kind of zigzagging in front of it, and then sent a message threatening to board the ship. The distress call went out, and a U.S. naval vessel responded, U.S. Air Force jets overhead, and kind of scared the IRGC boats off and escorted the U.S. tanker to safety. Those are both pretty serious, man. And again, kind of under the radar. So this was as negotiations were ongoing, kind of. And this is what I'm interested in your take on, because since then, we've had negotiations with Iran are going to happen, and they're going to include the nuclear program, missile program, the proxies, and depending on which phase, maybe leniency towards the protesters. And Iran at different times is like, we're open to talking about anything. Just kidding. We won't talk about anything but the nuclear program. actually we'll talk about everything, and we just did the talks and it doesn't look like anything came from it, and maybe we're going to continue to have talks. But my question for you is like, what is the way for the United States to approach this? Because Iran suggesting that they want to have talks and then everything slows down and then nothing happens is kind of what they've done for as long as I can remember. It feels a little bit foolish that we keep doing this, but at the same time, I think it would be reckless to just say we're not even going to try to talk to these people. What's the right approach there, do you think?
So if you're Iran, you're doing the right approach right now, which is 2 weeking Mr. 2 weeks, right? Because eventually he'll get bored and he'll go, all right, well, we're going to talk about it in 2 weeks. And then that's the kiss of death, right? Because then he never talks about it again, or he brings it up a year later. The Iranians, I felt, took the JCPOA negotiations pretty seriously. We know that during negotiations to re-enter it from 2021 to 2024, they things did not exactly go well, I would say. They weren't necessarily playing it hard, but the Biden administration and Iran just couldn't reach an agreement on that. But in terms of the start and stop, I think they're playing it right. I think they're like, Trump will eventually go away and give up. I think they are, to a certain extent, miscalculating on that approach, because Israel will keep Trump focused, right? Because, they always have, right? So I think they are miscalculating on that. Now, I think, generally speaking, though, I do think they're playing it right. I think they're playing it, every 2 weeks we will eventually get Trump to go away, and then we can go about it. But also, I think the U.S. and Iran are just, I don't think they can make an agreement ultimately on a nuclear deal, because I think the Trump administration's demands are too extreme for them, if that makes sense. It's kind of like when Trump went to, he didn't go to Pyongyang. He was in Hanoi, and he met with Kim, and Kim was saying he was open to some kind of deal on nuclear weapons. And his administration told him, all right, well, let's like pitch a treaty that will lock them in place for now and like hopefully get rid of their enriching capacity, and then we'll lift some sanctions. And he went in there and he just said, nah, and just told Kim, you need to get up all your nuclear weapons. And the whole thing fell apart. And if you remember, Kim left early. So I think that is the issue here with Iran and the United States, is that Trump wants them to entirely give up the nuclear program, not even for civilian purposes. I also think it is abundantly clear that Iran would like a nuclear weapon. I think if you are looking at everything that's going on right now and you see that Israel and the Gulf states are getting closer, I think you are like, yeah, I do need a nuclear weapon, especially now that the current American administration is zeroing in on them, and you're realizing that Russia is not coming to your aid, and nor is China. That's probably your best bet, especially now that the entire proxy network is broken apart. I think Iran does want a nuclear weapon at this point. And the U.S. position is that they cannot have one. And so I do think that these two stances are not tenable, and I don't think anything will come out of negotiations. So I think they will continue to say every 2 weeks until he gets bored and goes back to Greenland or Canada or Panama, Aruba, Bahama.
We did just pass the 2 week mark for Greenland. January 23rd was the 2 week announcement. That was yesterday. So we'll jump off here and look for the new Greenland deal that is expected, I guess, today. It's not happening today. There's nothing coming of that today.
There is no.
But so that's kind of my question for you, though, is like, you just described what we should expect with Iran, but that was the case going in, and we're expecting the same thing now. So there's a little bit of like, what are we doing?
Well,
like nothing's changed.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess I don't like when they started. So it looked like there was going to be movement around the protests. That seems to have fallen off entirely. And there's no indications that the protests are happening at all anymore. There are continuing to be reports of executions of people that took part in those protests. So that that just came and went, right? So whatever we're doing now doesn't appear to have anything to do with that. We're back to asking about the same things we've always asked for when it comes to Iran, and just I don't know, assuming that this time it's going to be different. I can't there's a part of me that thinks this is just all a front, all a show for a significant military campaign, because we're just asking for the same things we have before and nothing's happened. And they're striking the same tone. I mean, all of the things you said, it feels pointless unless there's something else coming. And I mean, there's a part of me, we definitely continue to stack resources in the Middle East. Maybe.
So I don't know if they're staging for a military confrontation or an extensive military campaign necessarily, because what are they going to do? The nuclear sites, as the Iranian foreign minister said, are far more damaged than they previously knew, right? So are they just going to bomb it again? Are there other sites they're going to bomb? Are they going to try to overthrow the Iranian regime from above? None of that really makes sense. I think that he's gotten himself into a bit of a conundrum here because he said help is on the way, and then the whole world saw him abandon the Iranians, right? And so the whole reason he could not help the Iranian protesters is because he was busy kidnapping Maduro and blowing up random boats in the Caribbean. So now he has sent all these forces over there, and I think they're kind of trying to find a reason for strikes, but I'm not sure they're going to get them. So I don't know. I don't think strikes are imminent. I do think to a certain extent, when did this buildup finish? Was it the 23rd?
It hasn't finished. It's technically still ongoing. There were flights over today.
Are the tankers over there yet?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff over there. There is enough. There is plenty to carry out operations. It's just a matter of how much. Technically, we do not have enough ground forces in theater to put boots on the ground in any meaningful way. So you could argue that no, they're not ready because those aren't there. But in terms of naval and air power, that's been there for a little while. But
it is interesting that if you look at the errors of the 90s with Bill Clinton in Somalia, right, in Mogadishu, they sent a pretty small force compared to what we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually U.S. soldiers ended up dying. And as we know, because of the predicament we're in now where the president can kind of do whatever he wants in terms of military action so long as it goes well, I think that to a certain extent that really does handcuff the United States' ability to project power, because in previous years it'd be, the U.S. could go and take action, yada, yada, yada. But if now the concern is, well, if we take losses, take casualties, this is going to be a mess for me, right? To a certain extent, there is a handcuffing of U.S. capabilities because you don't need all these assets in Iran, right? The fear is that you have to send so many assets so that there is 0% chance that you lose anything, right? But if you're trying to take action, you could have done this. You could have done it on the protest day, right? When he said he's going to. Without a doubt, they could have. And so I think that is the primary issue that is restricting the United States, restricting Trump in general, is that there can be no casualties. There can be no losses. I shouldn't say casualties because casualties includes wounded, and we know there were wounded in Venezuela, but there can be no deaths. And so because of that, everything with him takes forever. And so sure, everything works, but then you get into a situation here like Iran where we've been building up for 3 weeks now, and just seems like nothing's going to happen. I'm not sure anything will happen. So,
I mean, as you're saying that, we've got breaking news here, Ben, that the F-22s have been pulled from the Super Bowl flyover for operational assignments.
Well, what are they going to fly over to Iran now? I mean,
they're going right. Yeah. So this is Katie Spencer, the sports outreach program for the Department of the Air Force, said the initial flyover included a pair of F-22s. Quote, we wanted fifth generation aircraft from the Air Force and fifth generation aircraft from the Navy, But as things happen in our military, operational tempo has increased, so the F-22s got pulled for some operational assignments. They're not going to Iran. Like, there might be other things happening, but yeah, they're not grabbing those specific
they might
jets
be needed
and
in,
sending them
like,
over.
I don't know, for like
Greenland. It's
Minnesota.
the 2 week. Maybe it's the 2 week thing.
A 2 week thing. I was thinking he was gonna bomb Minnesota. But no, I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna go to Iran. I mean, they have. Can you believe this? This is a stat. I mean, this is kind of an aside. I want you to guess how many B-2 bombers you think there are in existence.
Is it in the 40s or 50s?
It's 21.
Oh, that's right. And there's like a small number of them that are like fully operational at any point or something, right?
Yeah, I think, only 21. And then I want you to guess how many F-22s there are.
That's 180 something.
Yeah, I think it might be 130 because I think only 130 are operational. Something. Isn't that crazy? Did you know they ordered hundreds of B-2s and they ordered so many more F-22s? But then the USSR fell and they were like, all right, well, we don't need any more. So we just have these high-tech fighters, but we only have like a couple of them, which is crazy, right?
That whole deal is wild, man. I got to talk to Alex Hollings a few months ago about some of these next generation platforms they're putting out, and it just doesn't feel like we're doing it the right way. Like, I put healthcare in the United States in the same category of like, I don't know how to fix this thing, but I can just tell you that this appears very broken. So we're building these jets, and like the first one is set to be in production in like 8 years. And it's like, I don't know, man. I feel like a lot of technology changes in the course of 8 years. That seems wild to me that we're going to look 8 years down the like things that could completely do away with what we're working today could be in place. 8 years to put together the next generation. I feel like I know things take time, but I don't know.
It almost, and I mean, Alex Hollins will know better. Maybe we should get him on here, because I wonder if it would work to our advantage to break the companies up, right? Because like Lockheed Martin has not always been Lockheed Martin. At one point there was a Lockheed, and at one point there was Martin. Same with Northrop Grumman. At one point there was a Northrop, and then there was also a Grumman, right? And so I also believe Boeing bought up something, but they didn't change their name. So, there's something to do there. They consolidated after the USSR fell. So maybe you just need to break them back up again. I'm unsure. Now, I'm open to the argument that, do you know what Bell Labs is?
Yeah.
They broke up Bell Labs, and people say that hurt U.S. innovation. Maybe. And I mean, essentially, we ended up creating like 6 local monopolies anyways. But maybe it is like a Bell Lab situation where you break up these companies and they innovate even slower than they are now, or they create even slower than they are now. But something needs to be done there, and they need to come up with something because I'm not quite sure what we're doing.
See, like the 10-year, again, everything takes time. I got it. But I think it was 8 years. They said, let's for math purposes say 10. If we say right now, we're going to have our next generation fighter available in 10 years. Is it really that unrealistic that China works 10% more effective or more efficient and says in 9 years, we're going to have ours, and they're going to have at least a year of superior aircraft? Like, if you say we're going to have it done in 2 months, yeah, probably nobody's going to be able to beat that. But that is a long enough timeline. It doesn't seem ridiculous that our adversaries could be like, I'll bet we could figure something out on par, because they don't have to be better than the thing we're building. It just has to be better than what we have right now. I don't know. That feels like a really long runway.
I do agree with you. My understanding is that one of the things between the U.S. and China is that, and I could be completely talking out of my ass here, but isn't it that airplane, I guess these are fighter jets, engine engineering is pretty hard to do, and that it requires a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of other things to kind of figure it out. I don't know exactly why it's so hard, because you're right. Can't you just look it up online and do it? But I guess that there is a level of difficulty.
So there's YouTube videos for everything, man.
Yeah. Right. Now, I think what could really help the United States is, and I've been advocating this for a while. And last time I said this on the podcast, people accused me of hating blue collar workers. We just need to ditch this Scranton bullshit. This are going to air this when I run for office in 20 years.
Should do that.
There's enough of this, like, well, we got 200 jobs in Scranton because the people are painting artillery shells or whatever. No, come on. What are we doing here? We don't need to do that. Let's bring in the Chinese dark factories as they have there, right? I mean, they're called dark factories because they're automated, so you don't even need to turn on the lights. I don't know if the lights are genuinely not on. Tom Friedman says they're not on. But bring in the light factories, make it all automated. We simply do not need to do this. We don't need to make artisan aircraft as the Russians do if they're Su-57s. So we just need to go full automation, and we need to get into it now. Now, of course, politicians have incentive, right, to make sure they're getting jobs created out of this. But time's come. Maybe the alternative here is maybe you just say, okay, there are 200 jobs, so we'll just pay $200 worth of tax revenue, or 200 jobs worth of tax revenue, or we'll just pay 200 people to sit around. I don't care, but there's a war coming, and we are unprepared, and we keep wasting these Tomahawk missiles. We're firing Tomahawks faster than we can produce them, and we're producing them so slow. So it is time to get moving here, because they are, frankly, they're upsetting me. And as America's mayor, that's a big to do. So
we're firing those Tomahawks into places that don't need Tomahawks either. That's one of the frustrations is right. It's a pretty advanced weapon system. And Nigeria does not have, Al-Qaeda elements and ISIS groups in Central Africa. Don't need Tomahawk. We can get by those just fine with other assets. The Houthis, for instance, we used a lot of Tomahawks against the Houthis. We don't have to do that. There's other things available. But either way.
Use so many other things. Yet they just love firing that Tomahawk, dude. And I don't get it.
We need those. We need those for other targets. But we got some questions this week, right? Should we dive into those?
We do have a lot of questions this week. Let me pull them on up here. So, as many of you know, you submit a question either in the Spotify comment section or in the YouTube. There's usually a post goes up Wednesday or Thursday every week, and we do it that way. All right. So, the first question here is for you, Preston. It's from Matthew Ternolo. Can we get an overview of where things stand in Gaza right now? It dropped off the map after the ceasefire.
I've not seen a lot out of that. So we've had the Board of Peace pop up, where I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was a presentation of what they want to turn Gaza into, which is kind of like a beachfront resort, for lack of a better term, like shopping centers and parkways and high-rise condos. That feels a long ways off. I guess it doesn't hurt to have goals on where we're going to move this stuff. It seems like pretty constant low-intensity fights. It seems like I don't want to say every day, but pretty regularly there are Israeli strikes being carried out against Hamas. So that's still a thing. No major fighting has taken place, but it just feels a little haphazard. I think it was earlier this week, there were Israelis that just went into Gaza, and the IDF had to go get them out and be like, what are you doing here? You can't, dozens. So I've not seen a lot there. Yeah, I agree. It kind of fell off the map, fell off the radar. I haven't spent a lot of time looking at it because as everything kind of dialed back, it turned very much into just a lot of he said, she said about talks. And that's mostly where it's been from what I've seen. No real reconstruction at this point, from what I can tell.
So this next one's from Nelson Mandela. He's a member.
What?
We love a member, don't we?
Nelson,
and it's Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
He's dead, right? Yeah, he is dead.
member.
Remember when they had the fake sign language interpreter at his funeral?
Oh, is that where that happened? That was wild.
Yeah. So he says, question for Ben. Do you think you can get away from your Basement Ben nickname just by moving out and calling yourself America's mayor? You need to try a bit harder than that. I will always think of you fondly and respectfully as as my friendly neighborhood basement Ben. All right. So for the record, I did not start America's Mayor as a replacement to Basement Ben, which has never been the official nickname.
We thought about putting that in the name of the podcast, Basement Ben. That's how official it was.
Here's what I'll say. I started America's Mayor because Preston can attest to this. I was calling myself the mayor of Chicago and the mayor of DC. I'm sure there are other places I've also referred to myself as the mayor as. I'm also referring to myself as the mayor of Benlana.
Yeah.
I believe it started because someone remarked that I had a mayor-like demeanor. I don't even know what that means. I guess I'm just maybe overtly friendly, I guess. Shaking everybody's hand. So I've just kind of referred to myself as America's Mayor. Now, it's very important you don't get it twisted, though, because people said, what's the difference between America's Mayor and Mayor of America? Mayor of America is very administrative. And to a certain extent, feels like a real-life position. As to where America's Mayor, that's like you're chosen. You're the chosen one.
I thought you were going to say you're just kind of a figurehead.
Well, and in many ways, I am a figurehead. Okay. I'm in many ways, I am to America what King Charles is to the UK, right? And so you either love me or you hate me, but it is what it is. But we have others. Preston, ooh, it's a voice crack there. This is from NAFO Coach Pender. He is a member. We love our members, don't we? You can subscribe and become a member for the low price of $5 or $10, and you will get so many things. We also have a rebrand coming. Not to get a little too crazy there, but we do have a rebrand coming. Preston, has there been any confirmed reports of the Flamingo ballistic missile used in combat? I feel like there hasn't been much talk about them in use. Also, an idea for member-only content is to post videos of Ben trying to pronounce Ukrainian cities.
That'd be rough. I don't know that I could be a very good judge of that. I know I struggle with a bunch of them from time to time. But if Ben's getting called out, that means they're pretty rough. Flamingo, no, I haven't. So this is it's a large cruise missile that Ukraine developed in-house, bigger warhead and longer range, allegedly, than the Tomahawk. And we've seen some test launches of it. There were a couple areas where it was rumored to have been used, but I don't know that ever made it into confirmation. One was like an FSB facility in Crimea, kind of an odd target for the first strike there. And then there was another one a week or two ago where there were rumors that something was hit, but the imagery ended up not being accurate. Like, if I recall correctly, somebody shared some imagery saying this was a Flamingo strike. And then the next day, it turned out that what they were looking at was just smoke from a smokestack, and everything was fine. So I don't think so. Possible that it's happened and it just hasn't really been announced or released. But I know one of the issues with Flamingo is it's probably going to be production. It's going to take a while for Ukraine to get a lot of numbers of that put together. And my gut tells me they're going to want to wait until they have a handful to where they can launch them, similar to the HIMARS coming into the country. You launch not all at once, but in a relatively short period of time before Russia can adapt to that new threat. So I don't think so when it comes to the Flamingo.
So this one is from Elliot Wade. He says, if you had to be doing the podcast from a different time as you are now, what would you pick? And then examples he gives are the outbreak of World War I, World War II, 9/11, and the response, and so on.
World War II. I have thought at times about, and I've made this suggestion to friends that make history content, that I think a really cool idea would be to go back, kind of like what I do now with Ukraine and other conflicts, like day to day what's happening. I think a really cool concept would be to go back to, pick a time, 1939, 40, 41, and kind of document the war day by day as it's happening. Like, these are the reports we got from, here's what the Allies hit overnight, here's the targets that we know Germany hit. And I feel like that would be wild. So yeah, I'd go back to that. I feel like there was enough information flow and a lot of stuff happening around the world. What do you got?
I think that already exists.
Maybe.
There's a whole channel of World War II by the day. You'd have to look it up, but yeah, there's a guy who does old fashioned, even dresses old fashioned. He does like old fashioned radio dispatches.
Okay. I was going to
It's
say
like
it's not.
pretty
I'm
popular.
not talking about like here's what happened on this day, but
Right.
more like you're in it, right? Like we just got a
Oh yeah.
report that this happened, and kind of like having to look at the information and say there's indications that there might be an Allied landing coming in Europe finally sometime in the summer of 1944. Like that kind of piecing together what's happening. I think that'd be really cool.
I would say so. I think World War II is like an obvious one because like you cannot get like a better saga than World War II, right? Even like the war in the Pacific. I mean, this whole thing ends with a massive bomb, right? I mean, it's kind of a remarkable story. Even the Pacific. I mean, you have these two nations in a race to create these gigantic warships to fight each other in the middle of the ocean, right? And then fighting tooth and nail over these islands. So World War II, I think, is perhaps the obvious answer, but I would also say maybe the Korean War. I'm willing to bet that people during the Korean War often feel, I mean, granted, U.S. intervention came nearly immediately, right, along with the rest of the UN, because China and the Soviet Union were boycotting at the time. But I think they kind of maybe felt the same way we feel today, where it's like, are there going to be nuclear weapons? As we know now, the Soviet Union were flying the North Korean planes, right? And they were in direct combat with the United States and the UN forces. So I bet there was like a lot of anxiety as we get now. Maybe not so much anymore because everyone's kind of just like, all right, whatever. We're on year 4 of this, and we got to listen to Vladimir Putin just yap, you know? So I would say maybe the Korean War. 9/11 is... I don't think I would want to do 9/11 because from what I remember as a kid, and you can feel free to correct me here, Preston, that was like, and to a certain, not only was everyone scared, there was like a pretty big witch hunt to anyone who disagreed necessarily with military action. There wasn't really any room for any discussion about anything, right? So, not that there should, not that there should have been, but you get what I'm saying. That and the fallout, and then you have Iraq like a year and a half later. So, I don't know if I'd want to do 9/11. That one seems a little too crazy. What do you think?
All right, I'm gonna add to that. Then I think
Yeah.
the Korean War could have been interesting in the modern media landscape because we were just coming off of this great, incredible victory of World War II, and for the first few months in Korea, we got our teeth kicked in.
Yeah.
And there was just like, what in the hell is happening right now? That would be interesting to see how it plays out in today's media landscape with like the blame games and like what is patriotic, right? Is it? Can you just imagine that right now? Like coming off a major victory, all of a sudden, I mean, we got pushed back on the verge of getting knocked off the peninsula very quickly. And a lot of the guys, a fair amount of the guys were World War II veterans, and World War II was less than 5 years, or about 5 years prior. So it was very fresh in our memory. That would be an interesting dynamic in today's media landscape. But I'm going to add the post 9/11 time period to one that I would like to do, because I would like to think the lead up to the Iraq War there's a lot of bad information flown around, whether you view it as intentionally malicious, outright lying, anything in between. And I think I would hope that in that same situation right now, we could help kind of shed light on some of that. What's accurate, what's not, what makes sense, what doesn't. And that's a case where if there was more vocal pushback with power, it might have like seriously changed the course of history. We might not have gone into Iraq if there were enough people with platforms able to push back saying this connection's not there. What are we doing?
That is interesting. I do think there's an element of truth there, but I would also like to remind you that the Dixie Chicks were kicked off air for saying they didn't agree with the Iraq War, right? So I don't know. I mean, if they did that to the Dixie Chicks, imagine what they would have done to us.
Yeah, America's mayor doesn't stand a chance.
Yes. So this one is from user, a bunch of numbers and shit. Okay. Happy Saturday, guys. I have questions for both Ben and Preston. First question for Ben. Do you believe there will be significant distrust between citizens and the federal government the post-Trump administration. Second question for Preston: if Ukraine were able to strike the GRU headquarters in the Ministry of Defense in Moscow, how valuable or strategic an attack like that would be for Ukraine? Take care, guys. Have a great weekend. All right, you go first.
It'd be significant. I wouldn't write that off completely. Anytime you lose a headquarters, I mean, the war on terror is a pretty good example of this, I think, to a degree. How many heads of ISIS, how many heads of Al Qaeda did we eliminate over the course of the, or even just high up command? A lot. That never eliminated the threat. That didn't win the war on terror, not by a long shot, but every single time it causes a disruption. So it's a bigger disruption taking out more senior officials. So I think if Ukraine could do that, and I don't think it's off the table, by the way, whether it's an act of sabotage inside of Russia or even, I mean, think about Operation Spiderweb being carried out around some of the government facilities in Russia. I don't think that's really out of the cards. It'd be a big morale win for Ukraine, similar to Spiderweb, but also, I mean, it set people back, right? How many people in any government or any organization have done like really, really efficient succession planning to where if I'm out, my next in line can step up and take over 100% the next day? Very few. So at the very least, there's going to be some pretty significant hiccups in operations. Not enough to end the war, but I think if Ukraine could do that today, it'd make a big dent.
To answer your question for me, will there be distrust? I believe so. I think, yeah. So let me walk you through here. So I believe there is a time period in which trust in the U.S. government broke fundamentally in a way that has been kind of impossible to repair. And I do think we're entering into another era just like that. And so if you go back to the 70s, you have Richard Nixon in there who says he's going to end the Vietnam War, but he doesn't, right? He doesn't do that at all. In fact, as we know, I'm not going to use the word illegal or legal. I don't know what it was, but he did conspire to keep the war going despite campaigning on ending it. We know Lyndon Johnson called him, George Wallace, and was it Hubert Humphreys as the other guy running at 68 to say that, we're going to do these talks. What do you guys think we should do? And we know that Nixon used a back channel to convince the North Vietnamese that they'll get a better deal if they ignore any breakthrough because it would have helped Hubert Humphreys. And then he kept the war going until, his reelection in 72. And then, of course, you have Watergate and everything like that. And then you have the Ford pardon. And I would like to jog your memory that since that pardon, if you look at the resume of every president up until Gerald Ford, even Gerald Ford included, they have all been outsiders. Americans ever since then have just had this attitude of everybody is corrupt. And so we need someone who's not from Washington. And so examples of this are Reagan. He was a governor. George W. Bush is perhaps the exception. Then you have Bill Clinton, a young governor out of Arkansas. You have George Bush, who is, his dad was president, but also another governor out of Texas. Did not serve in the House, nor did Reagan or Clinton. And then after Bush, you get Obama, this guy, young guy, straight out of Illinois. He's only been a state senator for 4 years at that point. He'd only been a state senator for 4 years, and then he became U.S. senator. He'd only been there for 2 years. Then you get literally Donald Trump, who has never been elected office once in his life. And then you get Joe Biden, who is perhaps a return to these resumes that you get prior to the Ford pardon of Nixon. And then you're back to Donald Trump. And so there is a level of distrust that's been broken there where people think the swamp's broken and we need someone from outside of Washington. I think, given that, now that you know that, and there's a lot of conspiratorial thinking about the U.S. government, I wasn't alive prior to 73, so I can't tell you whether or not that existed prior to then, but I can tell you now is that it is going to get so much worse. And I think you will see if there is another Democratic administration or really another president, you will see a drawdown of the federal government, almost kind of dismantled and broken. I think that's the only way to gain the American people's trust back. And I think you will see levels of distrust never seen before. But I think you will see a return to strong state governments and a return to the localization of America. And so what I mean by that is for most of American history, the federal government was quite not very powerful at all.
Mhm.
And it does not become very powerful till the New Deal. And then, of course, you have the Civil Rights Act. And the federal government, I think, in my view, correctly asserted its authority to enforce equality, right? And in many ways, use that mechanism going forward to kind of gain more power. And then, of course, after 9/11, you have all these even bigger reforms when it comes to law enforcement nationwide. So I think trust is broken. And I think the only people really benefiting from these ICE thugs and from the level of distrust being thrown out are state governments and local police departments who must be loving this, right? I mean, if you're the Minneapolis Police Department, from what I hear, you're being greeted how U.S. soldiers thought they'd be greeted upon entering Baghdad. Okay, I mean, flowers, parades of flowers, everything. We're hearing, as soon as they arrive in Philadelphia, I'm sure we'll see the same. So that's all quite interesting. But yeah, I do think trust will forever be broken unless they dismantle the federal government. Now, shall we do one more PS?
Yeah, let's go for it. Wrap it up.
All right. So this one is from Sinai Team Productions. Talk about Bannon and ICE deployment in the 2026 midterms. Also, Tulsi in that letter that was concerned about CIA activity. So you saw the CIA letter, I assume?
Oh yeah, was it Senator Wicker said I'm like very concerned about CIA activities. Please see me immediately, kind of thing.
Was it Wicker or was it Wyden?
It was a senator,
Wicker.
right? I mean, just a senator that just said like,
Yeah.
"What the hell are you doing?" Yeah,
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So I wonder what the CIA thinks over. I don't think it's anything related to Tulsi Gabbard necessarily. I mean, I've seen someone speculate that maybe they reopen COINTELPRO, which is when the CIA started operating domestically to like break the weather underground, and ended up being a whole thing. And they had the church committee at the time, as you recall. And but Congress will never do that again. They're weak and they're run by a coward named Mike Johnson. And also, they created the Gang of Eight to ensure there's never another church committee. So I don't really know what that's about. Do you have any idea? Any guesses?
no.
Way too so
vague.
The other one is talk about Bannon and ICE deployment in 2026 midterms.
I don't know
what
much
do you
about
think?
that.
Are you worried about that?
I don't know much about it at this point, so I'd lean on you.
So the whole thing is he says we need to send ICE to polling places, right? In order to ensure that all the votes are legal or whatever. But really, it's a broad attempt at intimidating people, And so here's what I think. I think they may try it, but I think they're pretty much screwed in the midterms, which is why you're seeing them try to like mess with the votes. They're over here in Fulton County, trying to screw around with the old votes. It's not really about the 2020 election, but rather these midterms and the 2028 election. So I don't know. I think at that point they will be pretty steadily reprimanded. I have no doubts in my mind that Mike Johnson will go along with it. I'd be surprised if John Thune went along with it. But yeah, I mean, they're going to try a lot of things to rig the midterms. He has to. As he says, they're going to impeach me. And yeah, I mean, the question is what for? Not necessarily will they. This guy, he's a one-man crime wave, right? So, Trump comes to town and your crime statistics go through the roof. So I don't know. I think the good news is the federal government has no control over the midterms. So they're all localized federally. And he says, well, the federal government should take over voting. They don't have the numbers. There's a filibuster in the Senate. They can't pass any bill like that. Maybe he'll try some nonsense. But my guess is that if you are Brian Kemp here in Georgia and Brad Raffensperger, if you're really anyone in these states where they're going, I bet you're making a contingency plan to ensure that does not happen. That if they do try to take ballots, you are ready with backups. I'm not concerned about that. Georgia has gone through this once, and we saw that the Republicans and the Democrats united together to fight off an attempt to rig their elections posthumously. So I'm not too concerned. Maybe we should be concerned about ICE arriving at the polls, but I don't know. I think at that point, the people are going to be pretty fed up with it, and I think they're going to be forced into a drawdown. What do you think, Preston?
It's not very many. I was just looking up. There's like 20,000 people employed by ICE in the country. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to blanket polling stations with 20,000 people. It's 400 people per state.
My
Like
understanding is
what are we doing here?
they have the funding and hiring to try to get to 100,000 is what they're supposed to be doing.
Bro, if they've got to 5x their workforce in the next 6 months, that's going to
Well, who's
standards
taking
through
these
the
jobs?
floor. That is not easy to do.
When you hear about the morale out of Minneapolis, I mean, it just must be daunting. They can't go out to eat anywhere because they get found out and they get run out of the building, right? They are constantly hounded everywhere they go with whistles and people pointing at them, fighting them. I mean, the morale must be brutal. And no, it's like a whole thing, right? I mean, Colbert had that guy on in the song, Jesse Wells, about the Joy and Ice song, which is funny, but also kind of sad. And I don't know where they're going to get these numbers at. I don't know where they're going to get these people.
There was a good article by Ken Klippenstein a week or so ago where there were a bunch of people in ICE leaking to him and talking to him. And he talked with a lot of folks that had been there for years. And he said that the morale was low because these are guys that joined wanting to keep America safe. And they had like the reason you're not drafted into these organizations, right? It's not like you put your name in the hat and maybe you go to ICE or I don't know, maybe FBI or DEA. Like you deliberately apply to these organizations. And he was talking to all these guys that like they wanted to go to ICE because they wanted to get like cartel members and violent criminals out of our country. And he's like, these guys are now like doing crowd control around a church in Minnesota and they're getting yelled at. And he made the comment, or how many of these guys commented like they hate it. Like, this is not what I want to be doing. Like, I actually like want to be down on the border apprehending like cartel members trying to get across. And instead we're doing this. And that of course doesn't speak for everyone, but yeah, something to keep in mind. Like there are people there's a reason that ICE hasn't been like front and center in American politics, like my entire life. They have existed. But there's a lot of guys that joined that organization over the course of the last 5, 10, 15 years that like they want to do the job of tracking down like the worst offenders that are here illegally, arresting them, keeping community safe and getting them out. And that's kind of not exactly what they're being put to do day in and day out right now.
No, I agree with you. I mean, you listen to veterans talk about it, or veterans of their, time in ICE. And it's important to remember that Obama did deport more people than Trump. Trump is still not on pace to beat that record. But ICE prided itself on professionalism. The reason you didn't really hear about ICE all that much is because they were not this paramilitary force designed to do that. They were, in fact, very respectful. And I believe in old interviews before Tom Homan has Stick the Line. And I'm no fan of Tom Homan, but I do think what he had to say in this old interview I saw was that it's deporting someone from the United States is a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to do, but I think it's also a very difficult. We all have mixed feelings about it, right? Because you tell me, I think, yeah, this is a land of second chances. Everybody should be allowed to come here, and get a chance at another life. Now, there needs to be some kind of process to do that, right? Mm-hmm. But I inherently understand that when you try to remove people, it's very emotional, especially because a lot of people that come here and they have kids, or they came here as a kid and they were like 3 years old, 4 years old, and the only country they know is America. There requires a certain level of professionalism and a certain level of de-escalation. And now that Stephen Miller's running the show, I mean, he wants confrontation. He thinks that all Americans want this confrontation, and I just don't think that's true, because people know that maybe, the first generation of immigrants, this hasn't been my experience at all. They've all been quite nice to me. I mean, you can speak. You're also at a place that has a lot of first gen. I find they're always very, very respectful, and in fact are great community members. But their kids are like straight up Americans, right? There's like no question there. Okay. Their kids are just as loud and bombastic and opinionated as any other American kid is. And so I just, I people don't like seeing this shit. And so I think if ICE returned to the polos and the slacks, they would face less resistance. But my take is what you're seeing with the show. I think that is kind of part of it. So anyways, Preston, any concluding thoughts today?
Let's wrap it up. Who are you on for the Super Bowl?
I think the Seahawks are going to win.
The spread looks low. I opened it up. It said 4.5. I think it started at 3.5. Now it's 4.5. That seems low. Like, I would not be surprised to see a 7 to 14 point Seahawk victory. Everything, they just seem like such a better team right now, but that'll be fun. We'll get that going Sunday.
Yeah, I just think the Seahawks have less holes. So where the Patriots, this team wasn't even expected to be in the playoffs. They went from 3-14 last year to now being 14-3. So Drake May, he's that dog, but I just think the Seahawks are too good. But folks, remember to like, comment, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple, and become a member for $5, $10 a month. And we are going to be releasing behind the scenes footage where you hear Preston and I talk about what we're going to talk about today and random other things. And also, we got something big cooking. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys think of that. All right. Love you. Bye.